And welcome, Mrs. Stiles, to Halakana Media and talking to the Arab and Muslim communities in Ontario.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, welcome. So, you have been known as a passion and determination in this campaign, the Happy Warrior. Can you first introduce yourself to Ontario Muslim and Arab communities?
Sure, I'd be happy to, and thank you. That's very nice to hear. I am the member of provincial parliament for Davenport, and I have been the leader of the Ontario NDP, New Democratic Party, for the last 2 years. I was first elected to the legislature in 2018, but I am now sit as the leader of the official opposition in the Ontario legislature, and I'm hoping to win this election and be the next premier of Ontario.
Perfect. So, let's start with some questions in regard to the Muslim and Arab communities. So, basically, the Islamophobia in Canada in general and in Ontario, there was some concerning rise on hate-motivated Islamophobic attacks in Ontario, and there was some tragic incidents in the past few years, like the Quebec Mosque shooting and London terror attack, and many others. How do you, as an NDP leader, and what kind of measures that you plans to do to protect the Muslim communities in Canada and in Ontario?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, because I know as I've been crossing Ontario and traveling around and speaking to members of the community all across the province over the last few years, there's no question that people are feeling that rise of Islamophobic attacks, but also just Islamophobia and, of course, anti-Palestinian, I think, racism as well. And we've certainly seen it in every corner of the province. So I think it's important. I mean, obviously, I have concerns about that, and I share the concerns of the community, but it's important we find ways to take real action, concrete action. And one of the ways that we in the Ontario NDP have done that, and I'm very proud of this, is working with the Muslim community to introduce and develop a piece of legislation called the Our London Family Act. That act ensures that there are policies in place that will combat Islamophobia in many different respects across the province. It's an actual, tangible, concrete legislation. And I think what's really important about it is that over recent years, we've also managed to adapt the legislation to make sure that it includes, very importantly, anti-Palestinian racism in the legislation. So that's been important. We've also been very successful in growing, I think, support on the ground and providing workshops to combat Islamophobia, highlighting our own representation on our caucus, people like Dolly Beck from Scarborough Southwest, who's put forward much legislation and been a really strong voice for the Muslim community of the legislature. And I'm very proud of all of that. These are just some of the things that we've done to really speak up. And I think I'd also just mention I'm proud of the fact that the Ontario NDP was, the first party in North America to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. We've taken many actions. I'd be happy to answer more about that if you're interested, but things like expanding the Gaza Family Reunification Program and, working really hard on specific things like ending the kafia ban.
Perfect. So that's very insightful. And speak of challenges, also concerning the Muslim and Arab communities, halal financing, as you know, like Ontario has the largest Muslim population in Canada, yet there is no halal financing options for homeowners. And many Muslims are forced to choose between religious beliefs and economic security. So, will the Ontario NDP support halal financing and financial inclusion for Muslim Canadians?
Yes, absolutely. And, I want to say I'm so happy to get this question because I had a very important meeting with the CEO of Manzo, Mohammed Suaf. I think it was last year with Catherine Fife, who was our finance finance critic and who is the member of provincial parliament for Waterloo. We had a wonderful meeting, and I was very happy to lend my support to halal financing options, particularly for home ownership. The NDP and the Ontario NDP are really committed to finding ways to improve economic inclusion, and that includes recognizing the need for halal financing. Our MPP, again, Catherine Fife, the finance critic and the MPP for Waterloo, has been advocating for halal financing, and she actually wrote to the finance minister on behalf of the community, which I think is really exciting. So we an NDP government in Ontario would absolutely support halal financing and financial inclusion for Muslim Canadians. It's unfortunate. You should never have to choose between your religious beliefs and your economic security. And I also just want to add that we are also very much interested in committing to ensure that the Islamic Credit Union of Canada is also pushed forward. I think that's extremely important for the community, and we recognize that, and we're going to support you.
Perfect. And since you mentioned that, because like Hana financing is like for homeowners
Yes.
let's dive deeper a little bit about this issue. And with skyrocketing rent and home prices, as you know, working class families are being pushed out of their communities. So, how would the Ontario NDP tackle the housing crisis and ensure affordable homes for all?
Yeah, absolutely. After 7 years of Doug Ford and the Conservatives in government, housing has never been more expensive than it is today in Ontario. And at the same time, we are building fewer homes than we have in 70 years. It's unbelievable, and it is clear that they have not met the need in Ontario. So we have a plan, and this is one of our priorities, is to make sure that more people have access to more affordable homes, and to make sure that we are also building more homes that people can actually afford. And so that includes a few things. It means that we need to make sure that rent doesn't continue to skyrocket, which is leaving a lot of people homeless or feeling very insecure and anxious right now. So we need to make sure that our rent increases are capped so they can't keep rising. We are also committed to building 60,000 housing units that are supportive housing units to help address encampments and to crack down on some of the other ways that people are losing their homes. We're also going to legalize different kinds of housing, like fourplexes and multiplexes and mid-rise housing. This is all really important part of our future. But I'm most proud of all of our Homes Ontario plan, which is to get the province back in the business of building truly, deeply, permanently affordable homes like co-op housing and rent geared to income, so that people have a chance to not only have a stable life and a nice place to live, but also be able to save for the future. It's really, really important. And I know many, many people right now are having to make impossible choices. I'm fortunate in my life. I was able to come to Ontario 35 years ago when it was possible to imagine owning a home on a working class salary. That's not Ontario today. And as the mother of two young women now, I worry about their future. I want to make sure that they have a good life, that they have an affordable and safe place to live and raise their families.
Yes. So, okay, let's go to another topic. That Let's talk about healthcare. So, as you
Okay.
know, that Ontario healthcare system is struggling, and
Yes.
between long times and overwhelmed ERs and many other issues. So, of course, you have plans for the healthcare and ensure accessible, culturally competent healthcare, including mental health support for all, including Arabs, Muslims, and Palestinian communities.
Yeah, this is such a good question because I mean, of course, as you know, we have a plan to hire thousands of doctors to make sure that every Ontarian has access to the health care that they need when and where they need it. But it is also really important that people receive that care in a culturally appropriate and competent way. from people within their own community, and also in their own language, of course. And we know that these days, 2.5 million Ontarians don't even have access to a family doctor. Yeah. So accessing that care is increasingly difficult. So not only are we committing to actually recruiting and supporting 3,500 new doctors immediately, cutting red tape so that doctors can spend more time with their patients and not paperwork, and more. But we're also committing to ensure that there's a diversity of physicians that speak different languages, that meet the needs of all of our communities. And I also want to give a special shout out here to my MPP, Dolly Begum from Scarborough Southwest. She's an NDP MPP, a Muslim woman who has worked really hard to introduce legislation that would remove barriers for internationally trained health workers.
So, okay, so let's move on. And there's another issue. We have lots of issues in Ontario.
Yeah.
Well, it's about the taxes. Like many Ontarians
Yeah.
feel that they are paying a lot of taxes while receiving fewer public services in return. So, what do you have in mind? What's your plans to um, address the affordability of crisis without increasing the financial strains on working class families?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest issues we have right now is that life is just so expensive already for so many people, and we need to make sure that lower income, middle income Ontarians, working people are treated fairly, and that means making sure that it's really just the wealthiest among us who are paying a higher percentage of taxes than others, right? Like we have to be fair, and that's what we've always believed in. I would say as well that there's other ways we can help people really directly who are dealing with the cost of living crisis. And one of the things I'm really proud of is we've just announced that we're going to introduce a grocery rebate program. And that means that lower and middle income Ontarians will be able to qualify to receive monthly rebate checks based on their income, based on the number of people in their home, to help reimburse them for the cost of groceries. So, for example, a family of four might get $122 every month, and that will help them to keep a few dollars in their pocket, but also to contribute to their cost of groceries, to food. We know that food prices, since Doug Ford became premier and the Conservative government came into power in 2018, grocery prices have never been so high, and they are increasing every day. So we're gonna deal with that, and then we're gonna crack down on the very big groceries giants and make sure that they're not gouging us by raising prices too high. And when they do raise prices, they're going to have to explain why.
Perfect. Yeah, that's interesting. So, okay, now in regard to related, as you know, the small businesses is the backbone of
Yes.
Ontario economy, and many small businesses struggle with high operating costs, inflation, limited government support. So, there was lots of even businesses who filed bankruptcy and shut down, and
Yes.
yeah, in the past few months or years, let's say. So what's your plan to support and help local and small businesses in Ontario?
Yeah, I think the pandemic and the impact of that was extremely and particularly hard on small businesses across Ontario. And the Ontario NDP, we fought really hard to get people supports when and where they needed it. But I know that the pressure continues. We're dealing with the higher cost of everything, and that impacts small businesses particularly. So we are big believers in putting in place policies that reduce some of the red tape for small businesses. I think, when I listen to small businesses, what I hear are things like insurance is really too high. And I can't apply to I can't apply to provide my services or my goods to the Ontario government in the procurement process because it's too complicated. It leaves out too many small businesses. So we're going to change that. We're going to change the conditions so that our procurement opportunities from the Ontario government, we call it the Ontario Buy Ontario Directive, are going to target small and scaling size businesses to make sure that at least 33% of our government contracts go to small businesses. That's an enormous amount of business that, frankly, the taxpayers of Ontario, have contributed to. So let's make sure that's going to keeping our small businesses strong. And then the other thing I wanted to say is we need to support some of our smaller businesses who have really suffered and had a difficult time through the pandemic. And I think a lot of the supports that were provided, they kind of ended after the pandemic, but we can get back to making sure that those businesses continue to feel that support. And what we've come to call the issues in our communities, the mental health and addictions issues that a lot of small businesses are dealing with on the front line in their communities, what we call the echo pandemic. These are issues that everybody is dealing with, but I think small businesses increasingly feel like they're on the front line of. So we have a plan as well to address that.
Perfect. So, okay, one of the other concerning, and it's a major thing, like many Canadians and many people of Ontario and in Canada in general, but they're facing a lot of, or seeing like in daily basis, crimes like people breaking in into jewelry shops, car theft, and all that kind of stuff. Like crime is increasing. Do you have any kind of plans how to control this issue and get things done the way it should be?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I know that there's a really significant increase in auto theft. And I meet with a lot of small business owners who are feeling very afraid and have seen a lot of theft and violence, frankly, inflicted on them. And I hear it all the time. And it breaks my heart because I know that a lot of these are small businesses and individuals who can't afford that kind of loss.
Mm.
So our party, we've been pushing for a number of really strong measures, particularly at the borders to prevent cars from being moved over across the border quickly. I was pleased to see the federal government take some action in this regard recently, but we need to do more. We've certainly proposed lots of measures that can be taken, but I think more importantly, we need to take some pressure off of our communities and municipalities so that we can free up more resources for programs to support people, to support youth, to make sure youth are getting that there are youth activities and programs to keep them busy and get them into careers and schools and off of streets. Right? We gotta move that forward, and the way we're going to do that is by ensuring that we take some of the burden off of municipalities, uploading some of the other responsibilities they have back to the province so they can focus on how we keep our communities safer.
Of course, that's
Oh, while I'm at it, can I mention one other issue
of course,
related to
yeah.
safety, but a bit of a different one? I don't want to forget to mention that I'm very aware as well, and this maybe goes back to some of your earlier questions about Islamophobia and the rise of Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian racism. It is the fear people are feeling in their places of worship, in mosques. And I want to say to the community very clearly, this is something we've been raising, we've been pushing for, we will continue as a government to increase protection for mosques and all places of worship. It's really absolutely essential that people feel safe and secure to worship everywhere, anytime.
That's definitely something our listener would appreciate hearing.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, as we near to the end of the interview, let's talk about the Ontario economy again, and with especially Trump's proposing major tariffs. What step
Yes.
will the Ontario NDP take to protect local industries and workers?
Well, look, I'll tell you this. First of all, I take these threats very seriously. I think Of course, any threat to our economy by tariffs is something we have to take very seriously, because Ontario's economy is very connected to the United States. We know now that Donald Trump has brought in tariffs on steel and aluminum. We're apparently going to have a bit of a wait. I believe that we need a very strong, united Team Canada approach getting these tariffs. It's not for individual premiers to be off making separate deals, right? We need to make sure we have a strong response and a united response. And my assurance to everyone as premier is I will fight for every single job and every single worker and defend Ontario against those tariffs. I think that may mean that we have to bring in some retaliatory tariffs. But again, that needs to be at a level, at a national level. And then I would say this as well. Unfortunately, under Doug Ford and the Conservatives, we have been left quite weak and vulnerable to these tariffs. People are already hurting. They're already feeling like it's hard to find enough money to pay the rent or to feed our families. And in a situation like that, we're vulnerable. As soon as there's a hit on our economy, it's going to be harder and harder for us to be resilient and to stand up to this. And that's the reality of the Ontario that we've been left with Doug Ford and the Conservatives after 7 long years. So it's time for a change. We have to make a change in this government. We have to have a government that is going to fight for people and care for people. And also, I will say, I don't think that Doug Ford, being a big fan of Donald Trump, he says he's 100%. He was 100% behind Donald Trump. This is not helpful for Ontario. We need somebody who's willing to stand up to Donald Trump and fight back and push back. And that's what my commitment is to the people of Ontario, and to build a tariff-proof Ontario. Focus on building industry here, buying Ontario-made goods and products, and investing in new supply chains and new trade relationships.
Perfect. Leader of Ontario NDP, Merit Size, thank you very much for being with us, and a pleasure having you in Hala Canada Media.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your vision and addressing key issues that matters to our listeners and community. We appreciate your time and commitment to the people of Ontario. Wishing you all the best, and we look
Thank
forward
you.
to continue the conversation in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Great to talk to you.